Okay, welcome back to House Education, January 19th, afternoon session. And committee, we are now going to pivot to higher education, which we haven't really talked about much, and more specifically, I don't know what I should call it anymore, the Vermont State College System, Vermont State University. Anyway, we're going to start off with just a 15-minute review of what the legislature has done in this area in the past few years. And so we've invited Representative James to join us, having been on the Education Committee for 2 terms, was really the point person on legislative work and was also a member of the select committee on the state college system that was appointed several years ago that came up with a list of recommendations and really a path for the state college system to follow. That's the path that they're on. And I'm assuming you're very well prepared because you always are. And if you would mind just taking over and introduce yourself, and we'll move forward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Representative Kathleen James from Bennington 4. So I represent the communities of Manchester, Arlington, Sandgate, and Northwest Sunderland. And did serve on the Education Committee for a couple of terms and worked a lot on higher ed while I was here, and it was great. So just wanted to walk you guys through a little bit of the work that we, I guess, bring you up to speed. So anybody who follows higher ed in Vermont will remember the fiscal crisis that was facing our Vermont State College system a couple of years back. It was in the news quite a bit. You may have heard something about it. The result, and you guys can dig into this as deep as you want to, but the result, among other things, of years of underfunding by the state legislatures. So for many years, Vermont ranked last in the country or near last in the country in terms of our state support for our state college system, which is, was part of the reason, or I would argue a large part of the reason that the Vermont state colleges found themselves in crisis a couple of years ago. So in 2020, in Act 120, as Chair Conlon mentioned, the legislature created the very grand sounding Select Committee on the Future of Public Higher Education in Vermont. And our charge was assisting the state in addressing the urgent needs of the Vermont state colleges and developing an integrated vision and plan for a high quality, affordable, and workforce-connected future for public higher education in the state. So the Select Committee was appointed. There were 15 of us, higher education stakeholders. We had the Chancellor of the Vermont State Colleges and other representatives from the VSC Board of Trustees, administration, faculty and staff, students, alumni. We had a rep from VSAC. We had a rep from the business community, from the Department of Labor, from Commerce, a member of the Senate, and then I was appointed to represent the House. So we met for 6 months. We were supported by NECHMS, the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems, which is a really fantastic national consulting group out of Boulder, Colorado. And our task was to deliver an action plan to the legislature. And I want to go back and just underscore the words action plan. The intent was that this report not be some dusty thing that gets filed away for a couple of years until you finally get to recycle it. It was intended to be something that the legislature was to take action on. And so I highly recommend that you guys all find and read that report, which is probably already on your committee website. The report, when it was delivered, was kind of neatly broken out into different areas of responsibility. So obviously there were a lot of things that the Vermont State College system was expected to do and charged with doing. And you're going to hear from them, I assume, all about the incredible work that they've been doing to take the steps that were recommended for them. They've been embarking on a pretty exciting transformation to bring stability, not only stability to the Vermont State University system, now rebranded, but also to well, I'm going to let them talk about what they're doing because the work they're doing as part of the transformation is really exciting. What I'm here to talk to you about today is what the report recommended that the legislature do and catch you guys up on where we are with that, so that you can take it from here. So number one, and I'm just quoting from the action plan itself here, the Vermont State Legislature should recognize the gravity of the fiscal crisis facing the Vermont state colleges and act with urgency to preserve the system as an indispensable state asset. That was the number one recommendation and acknowledged, I think, the fact that the legislature had not for many, many years stepped up with an appropriate amount of funding. So in recent years, I'm proud to say that the legislature has stepped up. When this report came out, we were funding the state college system with a base appropriation level of $30.5 million. Again, as a reminder, ranking either dead last or second to last in the country. For our current fiscal year, FY23, our base funding is $45.5 million, right? I look over to make sure. And we have additional bridge funding of $14.9 million. So we have significantly increased the amount of funding that we provide to our state college system every year, and I'm sure that they will come to you with a very well thought out budget request, right? So number one, funding. Number two, the Vermont State Legislature should articulate a clear set of statewide strategic objectives for public post-secondary education and set them down in statute. That's really interesting because if you go into the statutes, you will find that there is very little said about the Vermont State Colleges and what we expect them to do. And I know I only have a few minutes, and so I'm not going to get into my whole floor report, but you can find the statute. It is very vague. There's not much to it. And then I think it says something random like, oh, and by the way, you have to do dental hygiene or something. Anyway, it's just something very unusual, and it's not enough, right? So articulate a clear set of statewide strategic objectives, set it down in statute. 3, adopt a strategic approach to how it funds the VSC system, starting with clear and specific objectives for our investments, for that funding, right? So let's set some objectives, let's set them down in statute. 4, the legislature should adopt an affordability standard and charge VSAC with annually reporting on attaining affordability. This is a really interesting conversation because it gets to, well, when we say that, the public higher education that we deliver to Vermonters should be affordable, what do we actually mean? What does affordable actually mean? And how do we define that? So that's another charge that's been given to the legislature. 5, no later than the 2022 session, and I'll explain that in a minute, state an intention that high school seniors be required to complete a free application for federal student aid, that's the FAFSA, as a condition of high school graduation, as well as the state's grant aid application. And I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. I will just say that I think everybody around this table knows what FAFSA is. The idea is to encourage more of our high school seniors to fill out FAFSA because a lot of times students don't fill out this form because they assume they're not eligible, they're not aware of it, they don't know of all the opportunities it can unlock for them, so they skip it. Or, well, I'm not going to go to college because I can't afford college, right? So why would I fill out FAFSA? So we're trying to encourage more students to fill out both the VSAC, the state application, and the federal application, because studies show that increases college going rates. And finally, that was it. So those are the things that the legislature is supposed to do. So what have we done? Well, we've stepped up on the funding. You'll be talking to these guys about all of their future funding requests. What do we do about all the other things? Well, as it so happens, last year I introduced a bill, H 456, that would have accomplished every one of those things. Okay, so we took testimony on that bill. We took it up in February. We took quite a bit of testimony on the bill. We tweaked it a little bit. And we passed the bill out of the House we took it up in whenever we took it up. We passed it out of the House in February. It went over to the Senate. It came back to the House in early May, on May 3rd, with some changes from the Senate side that the House didn't agree with. It went into conference committee. We were not able to agree. The biennium ended and the bill died. And that is where things remain. So with that, Chair Conlon, I conclude my testimony.
Thank you. That was an excellent grounding and background. Any sort of legislative-oriented questions for Representative James on this? Yes, Representative Moss.
Just one question about FAFSA. How flexible is FAFSA in terms of like different ways that you can use it in different types of schools or?
That's a great question for VSAC. The thing I will tell you is that, and I'm sorry I didn't look this up before I came in, but we did amend the wording on the floor after we had some questions about making FAFSA required, for all high school seniors. And we changed the wording. By the time it got over to the Senate, or by the time we voted it out on the floor, right, Casey, we changed the wording a little bit to provide a pretty easy opt-out. And I think it was as simple as just, sign a form saying you're not going to do it. So we tempered that a little bit. But specific questions about FAFSA, I'm sure you guys will get VSAC in whenever it's relevant.
Representative Austin.
Yep. Are you submitting another bill?
Well, I did draft it, but then I moved to a different committee and stuff. And so Chair Conlon has all of my materials.
So we may resurrect that as a committee bill, especially considering a lot of what was in there was stuff that was recommended. Well, pretty much all of it was stuff that was recommended by the select committee.
The bill the draft I was working with, that the chair has to do with as he wishes, obviously, but it was they made some tweaks on the Senate side that were great and improved the bill in the collective we opinion. So the draft I picked up had, as passed the House, the parts we liked from the Senate. And then I think I added a study of the new provisions from the Senate that the House wasn't really on board with. So.
And just for people's history, where it broke down was over a proposal by the Senate to alter the governance boards of both UVM and the state college system and who was on them.
Right. Yeah, and one, didn't have time to take testimony, two, no agreement on this side at all about how to move forward with that. And so we had the final House position was that we proposed, I thought a well-crafted study that would take a look at that and see, well, what's the best way to go forward with UVM and VSC governance? And that's where it all lies at this moment.
Thank you.
Great. That was excellent information. Thanks very much. And folks, I would encourage you, if you happen to have a question and you see Kath in the hallways, just ask her.
Love the higher ed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, now the real experts. Thank you.
Great. And we would welcome as many of you as would like to sit in front, or if you want to go one at a time, you may, but please just make sure you have chairs up there. We are welcoming the Chancellor of the State College System, Sophie Zatny, and also very excited to have the new president of Vermont State University, and I'm going to apologize in case I don't do a good job with your name, but Parwinder Rawal.
Thank you.
Yes. And please feel free to correct. I'm sure you have a prepared presentation, so I'm just going to let you reintroduce yourselves and take it away.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm sorry, and Catherine Lavasser, their liaison to the legislature and somebody very familiar with the inner workings of the House.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate being here, and it's kind of great to, again, like Representative Austin, who I've just seen like in a little box. So it's just very cool to be able to be here and see you all in person this time around. And I think Representative James just did a fantastic job in sort of laying the groundwork for where we are. So yeah, it's actually 3 years ago, as the pandemic hit, we hit a financial crisis at the Vermont State Colleges. And so that's what kicked all of this off. So the select committee was hugely important, and we've essentially been following the select committee's reports. Obviously, things evolve a little bit as you move along, but it's been a really absolutely critical, I think, to the transformation that we've undertaken at the Vermont State College system. So I just want to add a couple of things to what Kath said specifically. So one was there is confusion, and I understand it, about Vermont State Colleges, Vermont State University. So right now, the Vermont State College system is comprised of 4 institutions: the Community College of Vermont, Northern Vermont University, Vermont Technical College, and Castleton University. And Northern Vermont University is actually comprised of what was formerly Linden State College and Johnson State College. And they both came together in, I believe it was in 2018. So once we have this, so we're getting ready to launch the new university, Vermont State University, which will be bringing together Northern Vermont University, Vermont Technical College, and Castleton University to form one state university. The Community College of Vermont will continue to be separate, and we will continue to have Vermont State Colleges as a system, and the system will be overseeing the 2 institutions. So I know it can be confusing for folks as to what's happening with that as we move forward. So some of the things that were really critical that came out of the Select Committee report, in addition to the ones that Kathleen James just mentioned, was, state funding. Again, we were funded, the $30 million represented about 17% of our revenue. Our peers across New England, their average is around in the mid 30%. And that takes into effect that the 2 lowest states in the country are both Vermont and New Hampshire. So that kind of pulls our New England average down. So, other states, it can be 60, plus percent. So we were definitely at the low end. We're really, really appreciative of the investment that we've had from the state moving forward. Other key recommendations were that we maintain the physical campuses that we currently have. So with this transformation, we're not closing any of our 5 main campuses. The Select Committee recommended or recognized the real important value of rural institutions of higher education. They act as, key anchors, economic anchors in their communities. They're significant employers in their communities. A lot of the students that we serve at the Vermont State College system simply would not continue with higher education if we were not in the local communities and available in those places. And again, we'll talk a little bit about hybrid and some of the things we're doing to increase the accessibility of the Vermont State Colleges as we move forward. But we do believe it's really important to maintain our existing campus locations. Having said that, we do recognize we're overbuilt. We're overbuilt significantly, probably 25 to 30%. So we are actively looking at how to reduce our physical infrastructure, because obviously there are very significant carrying costs to having all this excess capacity. So we are looking to maintain the campuses. The other big recommendation, again, was bringing together the 3 institutions into one new university. And the other one was engaging in administrative consolidation. So as a system, we have some things that are in common, similar student information systems, et cetera, but we've all been functioning as a federation and not as a system over the years. So everyone's, for example, just a student information system, we're going to use this field to do this. And then someone else says, oh, we're going to use this field to do that. So it's made it very hard for us to extrapolate sort of system-wide information, because everyone's kind of customized things their own way. I think we were up to like 450,000 customizations in our student information system. So we're trying to fix all that stuff. That's very much sort of, under the hood, behind the scenes kind of work. But we are engaged in this administrative consolidation as well, which will include the Community College of Vermont. So things like finance, human resources, information technology, looking at that from a system approach. So we're doing more the back office stuff, and then the university presidents can really move forward. Both President Graywall at Vermont State University and also Joyce Judy, who's the president of the Community College of Vermont, can really focus on their responsibilities in terms of moving their institutions forward. So that is really just sort of the general background in terms of what Kathleen shared with you. I know you have the slide deck that we've previously shared, so I'm going to just run through sort of some additional comments on that. One of the things I always like to do is really reinforce who we serve. I think a lot of folks tend to think of college students as being 18 to 22-year-olds. They're able to focus, take a full course load, get through in 4 years, and then move on. A lot of our students are not that. We serve a lot of non-traditional students. The average age of students in our nursing programs at Vermont Tech, for example, is 29 years old. So a lot of them are second career students. We really are looking to serve a much broader population than just 18 to 22-year-olds. And it means a lot of the students we have step in and step out of education. And we're really trying to strengthen those pathways as we move forward so that a student may start by getting a credential, a certificate, step out and then come back and maybe complete an associate's degree, step back out, maybe come back and complete a bachelor's degree or get a master's. But really recognizing that the students we serve really are stepping in and out of education. We've been able to serve a lot of students through the work that we received, the funding we received from the state over the past couple of years, particularly around workforce development. And Catherine will talk a little bit about that as we move forward. But I just want everyone to remember, because sometimes they think about their own college experience and they may have had a very traditional college experience. Some of you may not, but some of you may have done. And that's really not the students we serve. We serve a lot of Pell eligible students, which are really those students, again, that are sort of at the lower socioeconomic scale. We serve a lot of students that are first generation. So these are students that have a lot of barriers and challenges in accessing higher education. And so we want to make sure that we support them the whole way through their educational journey. Our Board of Trustees, again, the Select Committee report really took a look at, again, our Board of Trustees and set forth a number of expectations for what our board should be doing. And I happen to see that Representative Dickinson just entered the room. She is one of our legislative trustees and she's also the chair of our board. So we have 4 legislative trustees. The others are Jim Masland, David Durfee, and then recently retired Representative Bill Lippert. So we very much appreciate our legislative trustees, and Lynn is leading the board at the moment. On our board, we do have a really strong board. They're all Vermonters. They all live here in Vermont, work here in Vermont. They're very much engaged in their communities, workforce development, strategic planning, complex change management. We've had some really excellent, really strong trustees. They're paying very close attention to what we're doing. We report regularly to them on all our transformation updates. We have a big update coming on Monday at our upcoming board meeting. All that information is publicly available. We have a public transformation website. We put all the information up there for both for our communities internally, but also externally. So again, we've got in the slides, we do have a bird's eye view of what the Vermont State Colleges system will look like come July. So again, right now, President Graywell is actually the president of 3 institutions for this transitional year, but he will be the first president of Vermont State University come July. One of the reasons for including this slide is really to reflect the breadth of where we cover in the state. We kind of like to say that we're within 25 miles of any Vermonter between the Community College of Vermont and then what will be Vermont State University. Recognizing also that Vermont Technical College has a lot of learning sites. The way our nursing program works at Vermont Tech, which has been very, very effective, is it's based in a variety of communities. So nursing students don't all come to one central place, which makes it expensive to run, but it enables us to recruit a lot more nursing students because we're in their hometowns. And again, a lot of them are, parents working, et cetera, and trying to go to school at the same time. The transformation, I won't go into more detail on that. We've shared a lot of what the transformation has looked like over the past few years. I did want to just reflect on in your slides. There's one that talks about think higher education can't transform itself, meet Vermont State University. And that was an article that came out in the Inside Higher Education in August. And we share that because a lot of colleges and universities across the country are having to wrestle with the same issues that we've been facing. The difference is we're actually implementing a lot of the changes that need to happen. It's very hard historically to move higher education forward. My husband is a history faculty member, and one of my favorite quotes is, it's easier to change the course of history than change a history course. And it is a challenge. And we've been able to really move the needle in a way that other people around the country are paying attention to. The other piece is that a lot of the things we're doing are things that other institutions are looking at, but we're looking at all of them all at the same time. So, someone may be looking at one piece of what we're doing, but we're doing a whole ton of things to really create a very innovative and different system. Again, it's been disruptive, and I just want to say that we've had enormous support from our employees, both our faculty and staff. It's been hugely disruptive for them. It's been an enormous amount of work on top of maintaining, the existing colleges and, serving our existing students, asking people to step away and take time to really work on transformation teams. We've had just a tremendous amount of work and support from all the folks internally to the system, and I just want to make sure that we acknowledge that this would be absolutely impossible if we didn't have people on board and working through what all the challenges are. I think I already touched on this. Our primary objective right now is to make sure we successfully launch Vermont State University this summer, but we also have the streamlining of our administrative operations, and then the other piece is workforce development. So as a system, we've provided a lot of workforce development historically, but it's been somewhat siloed. So the Community College of Vermont does a really good job. Vermont Technical College does a really good job. Castleton has the Castleton Center for Schools. Northern Vermont University has a co-working space and does a number of different things up there. It serves as an incubator for new businesses. But it's all been sort of siloed and sort of off to the side. One of the big shifts that we're doing as we move forward is really making sure that workforce development is, and I think we heard this from what Representative James said, workforce connected was a key part of what the legislature's vision was for Vermont State colleges moving forward. So as part of that, Pat Moulton, who was the president of Vermont Technical College, has been appointed by the board to serve as the executive director of workforce development for the system. So she's the person that's sort of out there and trying to build those connections with employers, finding out what's needed, where there are gaps and what we can do to fill them in. And then we will be bringing together the workforce within the system. And I know Parwinder recently hired somebody to serve as it's a very long title, Associate Vice President of
Workforce, Community and Economic Development.
Right. So we're really focused on that as we move forward. And I know President Graywell will share kind of his vision on the workforce piece, but that's also really critical to what we're looking to do moving forward, recognizing that our students typically stay in Vermont. Approximately 80% or more of our students are Vermonters, and 2/3 of them will stay and work here. So one of the goals is to make sure that our students are very connected to their communities. So even if they come from out of state, that they're going to have connections here and want to stay and remain afterwards. Just briefly, I'll just touch on the shared services piece. So again, we're in the process of bringing together our IT, HR, and finance. IT is already launching right now this month. This is going to enable us to reduce the size of the Chancellor's office and also enable those particular functions to be more responsive to the needs of the two institutions that remain. Right now, sometimes I think people view the Chancellor's office as a bit of a black box. And, decisions come down and how is that made? So we're really changing the governance structure, and you have a slide reflecting that in the materials. And with that, I am going to turn it over to President Graywell. Of course.
So thank you for having us here, and thank you for what you do. I know that this is extra work for you all, but it is so needed for furthering the state's mission. The way this particular project has been established and framed as a transformation project, it is a unique opportunity in higher education. I call it an unprecedented opportunity, because many universities want to make some changes. They want to respond to what the world needs today, but they are unable to move the big institution in any which way. So they end up creating projects on the side. It could be a workforce related project or something else, a community office, community development office and such. But this opportunity enables us to address all that higher education needs to do right here in Vermont, because we are bringing three institutions together. We are building every system, every process. We're looking at every degree program, and our faculty and students, everybody is engaged in this process. So the way it got framed, and there is a guide, that's the select committee report that all of you contributed to. So it helps us really to talk about what higher education should be about. So we should be able to build a model university in the country. So I've been here for about now 6 months. I started in July. I started by going to not my main office, but to a campus. Campus I chose was Johnson campus. So the first day at 8 o'clock, I had a gathering of the faculty on that campus for a listening session. First whole week was all about listening session from campus to campus with faculty, with staff, with students separate. With that knowledge, we then launched after about 2 months a second series of envisioning sessions. On each campus, we will go and bring in faculty and staff together in those sessions and talk about what this university can be and what their particular campus is specifically good about, what they cherish about their campus, why they think their campus should exist. By capturing all that information and with the select committee reports work and my prior experience in bringing two institutions together in Texas, we then came up with 4 strategic priorities for the new university. So in our strategic plan, we will build around those 4 priorities. Our first priority is to become nation's first statewide hybrid university. What does that mean? The main focus of a hybrid university would be to increase access to higher education and to increase affordability. How we will do that? In the new university, student can start in any campus. They will have access to faculty and the courses from another campus if they so choose to do so. Therefore, bringing this intellectual wealth together from the 3 different institutions, student would benefit having access to more faculty, more programs, no matter what campus they start. Second is that students can commute to a campus. If they cannot afford to live on that campus, they just commute. Even then they have access to the faculty from all the campuses because of the new system that we are setting up. That system we are calling In-Person Plus. We will have all these campuses open as we've been asked to do so, to keep them open. So there will be in-person, regular classes. But In-Person Plus is that system in which we will use a device that every student will have along with the faculty member. But the faculty member will actually lead a class on one campus, whereas a group of students from another campus could also join. Our hope is that even our nursing sites, 15 plus sites that we have, students should be able to start at anywhere and would have access to our education. So that's enhancing access and increasing affordability because everyone doesn't have to always come to live on campus. So that's the hybrid university. The second priority we have is to become the nation's first fully career-ready university. What does that mean? That means that every student that will join this particular university would come out when they graduate with at least one industry-relevant micro-credential on their transcript. And they will have at least one fully community-engaged experience so that they are ready for the job. No matter what discipline they choose, even if they choose philosophy, history, whatever the case may be, they'll still have one technical skill or one micro-credential that they will have to obtain. This way, we will prepare the future workforce that is needed. Most often, students realize that I chose my major based on my interest, but in third year, fourth year, what job I'm going to get. If they chose engineering, they know a job is waiting for them. If they chose nursing, easy for them, right? But others, this will help them get their first job. Micro-credentials, there are thousands of micro-credentials that we can offer. One example I usually use is Microsoft Excel. If everyone get something about Microsoft Excel, because we know it can do so much more than just inputting the data in. If a person can really pull in the data of an organization and help the manager make a decision that would be data-driven decisions, there's a lot, that person would be really wanted by that organization. So we want to prepare our students with at least one such micro-credential. It could be entrepreneurship, it could be whatever else that they choose to do. One such micro-credential we have developed is a 3D technology certificate. Now that we have a great investment from the federal government in our Vermont Tech College to build the new advanced manufacturing center. So we have huge 3D technology printers that are industrial size, not teaching size, industrial size. So bringing those employees from that group along with Vermont State faculty and Castleton faculty, they all came together to develop this workforce-oriented 3D technology certificate that high school students can obtain, our own students can obtain, along with whatever other degree they are getting. So those are ideas about how we are framing or setting up the university to be a career-ready university. The third priority we have is for the university to become a community-engaged university that serves as a catalyst for rural transformation. We are in rural campuses. We are uniquely situated, that's our Vermont State University campuses. And much less work gets done. Rural areas always are behind. And with these campuses, we want to build intellectual capital in those communities by engaging faculty and students together with local leaders, community partners. By bringing the three together, they will co-envision solutions to local problems. So the way we can set up our education system that each in a number of courses, faculty will take their students into the community, work with the community partner to look at a problem and try to come up with solutions. It will not only bring value to the university, but it will bring value to the local community because now we are in partnership helping each other. The most important thing in this is this, that students engaged in that kind of work get so inspired to do something bigger than just getting a degree, because now they feel that they can actually solve some problems. They can be the change agents in this. And that inspires them, that increases their retention, that increases their community engagement, kind of attachment to the community and to the university. And that will retain more of those folks into the community where they would study. That way we can retain some, students who will come from other states as well. They could start a nonprofit based on some of the work they might be doing, or a new company for that matter. And we do have a small business development center at Vermont Tech, which is the, both statewide, and it's federally funded. Their job is to help other businesses grow and help small businesses. Now we are leveraging their services to help our students get ahead. So even students sitting in these kinds of community engaged work classes, they can build a small business of their own. And they would know where to find the resources because this center folks will come into the classrooms to help them see that. And engineering students in the capstone program towards the end, they always have new ideas already prepared. They could be starting small businesses on that. So that's our third priority. The fourth priority is also timely, which is for the university to become an employee-centric university. As you know, COVID has impacted pretty much everybody. And also we have mental health issues that have escalated. Looking at that, employee wellness would be important, but also we want to build on that particular priority by enhancing innovation at the university, empowering our staff, faculty and staff to engage in innovation, not have these priorities sit in a book, but each priority will have an innovation committee that will constantly work on finding the solution to the next problem. And we will fund those committees to find new solutions. And we will develop that culture and have professional development for faculty and staff to be able to engage in such innovations. And also data-driven decision-making, again, empowering, providing professional development so that people can move in making data-driven decisions. So those are our four main priorities for the new university. And if you look at strategic plans from other universities all around the country, you wouldn't find this kind of strategic plan because, again, unprecedented opportunity that we have to dismantle the system. It had a huge shock, so we can build something new, and that's the opportunity we are describing. And the university has already built our leadership team. So those leaders are already now working on their staffing plans so that entire university can come together by July. In the three institutions, each institution had like 4 colleges or 5 colleges. Now we will come together, entire university will only have 5 colleges. Therefore, we reduce the number of deans, number of administrators at the higher level, therefore become more cost effective and efficient. This would also make a difference in terms of how we offer classes. Faculty have done a lot of work coming together. They had about 250 or so programs among the 3 institutions. Now we reduce that to about 120. So overlap is gone. And that way we would have more students per class, therefore more cost effective, affordability would increase based on that as well. Next slide, I'm going to. Yes.
You guys have given this presentation previously, and does it come in under an hour? I just want to, I'm sensing that this committee may have some questions just on the vision that you've laid out, and I may want to take the opportunity to let the folks ask some questions. Does that sound like?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Please ask any questions. I would mention one more thing that we already, with the help of the board, set a new tuition rate for the university. We have reduced our tuition already to less than 10,000 for in-state students and less than 20,000 for out-of-state students. So that's, we are kind of meeting the affordability criteria set for us.
Thanks for sharing the vision. I think that if somebody had said this to me when I was an 18-year-old, I might have chosen a different path. And in particular, I just am tickled by this idea of the career-ready credential, whether you're an art history major, which I was, or not, just because it exposes somebody to something else that can really open up a different world. Anyway, enough for me. Yes, Representative Stone has a question.
Hi, Representative Stone, Burlington. I represent the area where UVM is. And so I hear a lot from my constituents, a lot of them are students, about finding affordable housing. And I really appreciate all that you put into making this experience, college experience affordable and accessible. But I'm wondering, when you were having your listening sessions, what are you hearing from students in these areas about their ability to find affordable housing? And what are you doing if you are hearing the stuff I'm hearing to break down that barrier?
So we serve quite a different population than UVM of our students. You know, many of our students who can afford to live on campus, they can live on campus. Others, there are many commuters around each campus. We have an area, 20, 30 mile radius. So we have commuters, they're coming from home and such. As the Chancellor mentioned, we have 75 to 80% of our students that we serve are local. That means they are Vermonters. Housing is a problem. We do have housing on campus available on some of our campuses. As we are overbuilt, we have fewer students on some of the campuses. But it is true that still students who would want to live outside, there aren't as many houses available. So what we can do from our side to hire some of those students to serve in some role at the university so that they can afford it. And one of our goals is to hire more and more students engaged in university's work, because that is learning and working together. And that reduces their burden, but also helps the university, and they are also professionally benefiting.
So you still maintain residential living options on all of those campuses?
Right. At Vermont State University, Community College of Vermont does not have residential housing. So the one place where we are very tight on housing is the Williston, Vermont Tech Williston. They can house 50 students. But otherwise, we do have housing, space on our campuses. And in fact, we've been trying to think of innovative and creative things to do with the excess capacity we have. So for example, Smugglers Notch has, I believe it's about 75 international students that come and work at Smugglers during the winter here, but the summer for them. And we're housing them at the Johnson campus. So in the past, during the pandemic, we actually housed traveling nurses and some Vermont Law School students at the Vermont Tech Randolph campus. So we're actually in the position of having more capacity. We run into the issue for employees, as President Graywell knows, when he moved up here, trying to find somewhere to live. So that's an issue for us. So one of the things that I personally would be interested in doing is seeing if we can provide more employee housing, repurposing buildings for that. We have had other agencies come and look at some of the facilities we have to see if there's a way to create affordable housing with them. The challenge is that, a lot of them, there's a ton of deferred maintenance, no elevators, communal bathrooms. These aren't facilities that can be readily converted into housing units. So yeah, we don't have the same problems that UVM has on that front.
Do you project that the system will have more residential students or fewer residential students as you go through this transition into a more hybrid style university?
Our goal is to get both kinds of students. By lowering tuition, by setting up a new university with all these exciting opportunities, we believe that we will get more students of both categories. We also want to enhance online offerings. So therefore, those students could be anywhere in the country, but they could access our program. So that way we could generate some revenue from those sources. So we are after both types of students. And yes, there is also a project that we have to look at right sizing our campuses. As we are overbuilt on some, we have a plan, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, to divest some of the extraneous properties that are not contiguous or close or joined to the campus, that we can, sell off or divest off, so that we're not carrying just the cost of maintaining them.
And the other thing, I think one of the goals is really to, again, we serve a lot of Vermonters, but we also have a lot of really innovative and exciting programs. Again, the Advanced Manufacturing Center that Dr. Graywell mentioned. We have Atmospheric Sciences up at Linden. We have the Killington Resort Management Program down in Rutland, where students live at Killington at the resort and both work and learn there. It's a year-round program. So we have some really interesting, innovative programs that I think by coming together, we have more resources in order to expand our ability to market those programs outside of Vermont and outside of New England. Also, the very fact that we created Vermont State University, we've had a significant uptick in interest even from international students because they know where it is, it's Vermont. They know it's a university. If you're a college, in a lot of other countries, college can also be high school. So we've seen a significant amount of uptick, just even internationally, just by simply changing the name to Vermont State University. So obviously those students would be residential students if they were to come.
Go ahead.
I'm really excited by the community engaged university. And can you explain a little bit more? It sounds to me like it is internship like, but it's also different.
Yeah, it is more than internship. It is by design. Faculty would actually create community engaged courses. You're teaching a class in sociology, you're teaching a class in biology that could have relevance to biodiversity, could have relevance to stormwater management, whatever the case may be, the faculty is teaching. And they will take this group of students and work with the community members, city manager, it could be nonprofit organization, to look at a local problem while they are studying the text. They will also be able to do a project like that, create the data, envision some solutions to it, then students presenting that solutions to the community and coming up with, back and forth. And then that community member could either run with it or could say, yeah, that solution is really exciting. I'm going to invest in it further to be able to fix this problem or create a new business, whatever the case may be. So it is by design, a number of courses on each degree path. We will actually professionally develop our faculty to be able to do that so that they consider the community partner as equal partner co-envisioning a solution rather than faculty members saying, I know everything. So it's that kind of training would have to be given. And that's how we see it. And on the top of that, then from that, I'm sure that community members would say, I want 2 of these students to work with me to continue on this project. Mm-hmm. So that's leading to internship, right? And or a company, local company they could work with. Already Vermont Tech, a lot of students are working with several different companies, including GE, that they can, it can lead to internships for them too.
The other thing up at Linden, where they've been pioneering what's called Learning and Working Communities program. They received a significant gift from an alumni. And with that, the students are getting paid internships in their field. So they're really getting that sort of career ready piece. And being paid, again, it just helps with the affordability because often internships, if they're not paid, a lot of students can't afford to do them because they need to be working and making money while they're studying. So that's been a successful sort of pilot effectively that we're also looking at that, but building those learning working communities with local employers.
Yeah, so each of these priorities are anchored in what Vermont is looking for and what higher education is trying to do, but we are setting it up as the core pieces of the university.
We heard in the presentation, Representative James, about how we did not put into statute some of the recommendations of the select committee. Is that having any impact on what you're doing, or really whether we put it in or not, you're going ahead with what those recommendations were?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, the select committee at the end, they had a list of recommendations. So they had recommendations for the board, for the chancellor, for the institutions, as well as for the legislature, the governor, and even just Vermont as a whole. So yeah, if you look at the bill that Representative James was talking about, those are really capturing the strategic priorities that the board created back in the fall of 2020 about being accessible, affordable, having high quality and relevant academic programs. So really, it was just really capturing things we were already doing and have done. So it would be nice to have, but we've been sort of following it anyway, even without that piece.
Part of the sort of agreement for the increase in baseline funding, and I'm not sure if I remember this correctly, but there was also supposed to be a corresponding commitment on the system to decrease expenses. And can you give us sort of an update as to where that stands?
Yeah, so the select committee report provided that they estimated approximately a $25 million structural deficit. So just, our expenses exceed our revenue. And so we are in the process of, so it was proposed that we do $5 million structural deficit reduction over a 5-year period. And so we have accomplished that for the last fiscal year, and we're on target to do that for this fiscal year. So that is definitely part of what we're doing. And a lot of that goes to what Dr. Graywall was saying in terms of, so far a lot of those savings have really been realized through consolidation of administrative positions. As we move forward, we definitely will be looking at other things such as dealing with the amount of the physical infrastructure that we have, because again, a lot of the carrying costs that we have for some of these buildings and the extensive deferred maintenance on them. So there are other places that we'll be looking as we move forward, but that is the intent. Again, streamlining on the administrative side, just bringing in some efficiencies, building better, more consistent processes so we're not all reinventing the wheel 5 different times, different ways. Those are all designed to really help us achieve that structural deficit reduction. What the select committee recognized was it's not all just about reducing costs, it's also about generating revenue. So again, the goal here is also to generate more revenue. We do understand that that's going to be challenging as we move forward. So we want to build attractive programs, we want to build relevant programs that students want, but we also recognize, as I'm sure all of you are aware, right, we're facing a demographic cliff that's coming up in a couple of years' time, where the babies that weren't born in 2008 with the recession will not be showing up. And that's going to have an impact that we're going to have to take into account. So really it's about trying to make sure we're serving students as well as we can and meeting a variety of students where they're at. So not just focusing on traditional students, but really thinking through how can we also be serving adult students that are also looking to either complete degrees they started but didn't finish, or get an additional credential so they can move forward in the workplace, but really being creative about who our student body is as well as we move forward.
I think Catherine has something to add.
If I may, Catherine Lavasser, Director of External and Governmental Affairs for the system. Just to clarify, it's $5 million per year. And so for a total of $25 million. So we accomplished the first $5 million in savings in FY23. We've put forward an FY24 budget that reflects another $5 million in savings. So that carries us through FY26. And so the select committee funding recommendations, as well as our budget design, is based on that stair-step plan to reduce our structural deficit while the state is simultaneously increasing their support to ultimately right-size the system. And apologies for interrupting, I just wanted to clarify that.
And I just, there's more to the presentation, I realize, and I think maybe if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes to talk about the tuition, and then we'll pause on the workforce stuff and maybe leave that for another time so we have a little bit more time for questions.
So on the tuition side, we had, all 3 institutions have different tuition structures and different discounting rates as well. So our first charge basically was to bring one uniform tuition rate for the entire university. So we did propose that, and we also then rearranged our discounting from the 3 institutions in a way that those are more need-based. They are not blunt that everyone will get in-state tuition rate, but it is need-based. If you are attracted to our university, you have a need, you will get a larger scholarship that the institution provides. The others will get a little less. So this way, we have brought our tuition to less than 10,000 for in-state students and less than 20 for out-of-state students. There are certain programs that are a little more expensive than that. That would be like nursing, where you have a faculty-student ratio is dictated by the accreditor, is few students per faculty, and or engineering programs that require extra equipment or resources. Those have course program-related fees. But those also we reduced at least by 1,000. Every program at Vermont Tech would be at least $1,000 cheaper moving forward.
One of the challenges historically is that, universities have these very high sticker prices but that's not the amount that institutions pay. And a lot of the institutions that have gone out of business here in Vermont, private institutions, that was sort of part of the game they were in, where they would have a sticker price, but then they were discounting so heavily for students and then get to the point where they're just simply not taking in enough revenue to cover the costs. So this is a risky strategy, but I think it's an important strategy because what we're doing is effectively saying this is the tuition cost. And then if you have, need that's not otherwise filled, we will work to provide additional institutional aid rather than everybody, the sticker price is here, but we tell everyone, oh, great, you're getting a scholarship. So, your price is actually going to be this. So it's really more truth in advertising, I think. So a lot of people, again, don't look at a sticker price and think there's no way I can afford to go to college. They're actually looking at a price that is the real price rather than an inflated price. So there are a number of institutions around the country that have started doing that. But again, it can be a challenge because a lot of people are used to, we can negotiate, that's what the price is, but we can actually pay less than that because we're going to get a scholarship. And this way the scholarships are really going to be targeted at those with the greatest need.
And even with this strategy, we are at the forefront in the nation. And we received a citation in New York Times in a national analysis of how universities are dealing or going through this crisis that we are under at this point. And that's an approach to be open, and this is what we charge. There are no hidden costs that people would have to pay.
Bringing you back briefly to what Chancellor Zadani was saying earlier about our student demographics as well. If you think about many of the students that we serve, they're turned away when they see a very high sticker price. It might be, more money than somebody makes in a year, more money than their family makes in a year. And they look at that and they say, I need a 2 or a 4-year degree. How would I ever afford this? How would I ever pay my loans back? And so that is a huge consideration for us as our student population as well. When we look at the student pricing strategy, we're really excited that the state support has enabled us to do this, and very, very excited. We've launched applications. Applications are open for the new university. We're going to be enrolling our first class. So it's a really exciting year with all of these changes, and the tuition is a really big piece of that.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly support this model. As you say, it's truth in advertising. Hard to think that truth in advertising is innovative and forward-thinking.
Sad statement, but
Although we could lower using a price of $9.99, but you said this was risky.
it's a little bit risky because when, if we have a student, let's say an out-of-state student, they may come to us, they'd be given, this would be what it would cost to come. And, one institution might say, but we're going to give you, a special scholarship to come. And so it makes it, and there was just a report that came out, and I can't remember now, I think it was from the Federal Trade Commission, pointing out how misleading a lot of the student aid letters are, that they are very confusing for people and they're very vague. So one of the challenges is if you're very upfront about what it is and someone else is very vague, people may think, that they're actually going to get a better deal at the place that's very vague, and then go and find they've got all these additional costs. So there is a push nationally to make sure that there's more transparency in student aid letters that go out, and that people understand them. And I actually was talking to some financial aid folks, and they were saying historically, all that information, all the numbers were in the letters, and then people said, it's too confusing having all these numbers in this letter. And so gradually over the years, the letters kind of got shifted to being more vague and amorphous, but I actually think it would be better for people to know exactly what it is that they're likely to pay. And the other thing, again, we've been really focused on Vermont State University, but for the Community College of Vermont, through the 802 Opportunity Grant, which I'm sure you will be hearing about as well, that's been a really important tool because that really enables students whose family adjusted gross income is $75,000 or less be able to go to CCV essentially for free. And that's really important, again, from an access viewpoint. So again, we're really looking to build those pathways too for students that start at the community college at Vermont and then want to finish out with a 4-year degree at one of our other, well, what will be Vermont State University. So I think we're really moving the needle on affordability in Vermont, collectively. But it's a challenge, but, we're excited to be able to go out there with a bold promise on tuition. And this will be for the incoming class. What we have assured the students, our current students, is that they will not lose any of their existing scholarships. They won't be paying any more than they're currently paying as we move forward.
Representative Dickinson.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know you're coming to the floor at 3:00. There is an important part of the workforce development. One of the things we gained out of COVID, and I think maybe Catherine can go into greater detail, we had a huge increase in our apprenticeship attendance that is attracting the trades and other things that we really need in this state. And if you want to go over some of the workforce stuff, because that's really important.
Sure.
Please, you can come here.
So,
Just tell us which slide we should jump to, what number, if you have a number.
yes, if you jump down to slide 18 or 19, so I will cover this very, very briefly, but as Chancellor Zadatian said, we've launched this unified workforce development effort across the colleges. We've hired former President Moulton to lead that as the executive director. And we've gotten significant support from the state for a couple of early initiatives over the last couple of years. The first on slide 19 is a workforce upskilling initiative. So we've done this over 3 years and offered free courses or training to Vermonters whose employment or employability was impacted by the pandemic. We've been able to serve over 3,000 Vermonters with this support, with a free class or a free training. So it's been credit and non-credit. And one of the big things that we were also able to offer with it was wraparound services. So if somebody needed support buying the textbook or accessing the technology, they needed financial assistance with transportation or childcare, we were able to provide a certain amount of financial support to each student taking these classes, and got a lot of positive feedback on how that was lowering barriers to access for students, especially during the challenges that families and working families have faced over the last couple of years. The next slide, slide 20, talks about the critical occupation scholarships. So these have impacted a tremendous number of students. These have been free last dollar tuition, so it's been the out-of-pocket cost that remains with a student or a family after their state and federal gift aid is applied. So if you're Pell eligible, your Pell Grant, your Vermont Grant, your VSAC aid, any institutional aid you have. And then this truly covers the last dollar out-of-pocket costs. So with the assistance of some state ARPA funds, we were able to offer these scholarships. One really interesting statistic that we've been following, enrollment in the early childhood education programs across CCV and the Future Vermont State University, as well as the nursing programs, has been incredibly high since the scholarship was instituted. And in our clinical mental health master's program, which is at NVU, we've seen an increase of 56 students, which is about a 68% headcount increase in that program since the scholarship was offered. So more students are able to pursue that master's degree. We know that there's a shortage of mental health professionals in the state as well, and that's made a huge difference. Private loan borrowing, also since the scholarships were instituted, has dropped about 50% at 3 of the 4 current institutions as well. And at the 4th institution, private loan borrowing has dropped about 30%. So private loans are like non-VSAC, non-federal loans. It might be through a bank or a credit agency. Those are usually like what families turn to as a last resort. Sometimes the borrower terms are the interest rates are worse for families. And so really exciting that that's dropped significantly. And then in the plumbing and apprenticeship programs, speaking of the hybrid university model, with the pandemic, we pivoted a lot of the delivery, the pieces that did not have to be like in person with a electrical board, we pivoted that to remote, a lot of the coursework, and we saw pretty much a doubling of enrollment in both plumbing and electrical in the apprenticeship programs over the last couple of years. So we have record enrollment. I think the last number that I saw was 600 students between the 2 programs currently enrolled, which is really exciting for the state's workforce. And
Boy,
very,
it's
very
very exciting for us homeowners.
Yes. Considering what I just went through to get a plumber to my house, yes. On the enrollment side, very briefly, institutions across the country have dropped about 4.2% in student headcount over the last couple of years. We've held steady and increased about 0.5% across the system, so inclusive of CCV. We've held steady at Vermont State University, and we've increased about 1% at CCV. So in many ways, these scholarships and initiatives have helped us buck the trend, and it's been really exciting to see that hold. Last thing I will say is also on the enrollment side, when you see that 10,000, I think it's 10,551, that's the number of students enrolled in our credit programs. We actually have 2,761 students enrolled in non-credit offerings. So that includes some of the apprenticeship. It includes like the weekend meat cutting courses at Vermont Tech, anything that we offer non-credit. We're also serving just under 3,000 Vermonters in that capacity as well.
Great. I just sort of think back to sitting in the committee room when Chancellor Spalding came in and essentially scared the bejesus out of us about how the state college was teetering on the brink of really dark times. And that really wasn't that long ago. And the progress from there to here is really nothing short of amazing. Yeah. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right, folks, we stand